Awesome. Wonderful. So here's the deal, folks. We had to fight through a little technical issue there, but the dust has finally settled a bit. Things have calmed down. And even though there was a pretty big news story, it seemed like every day over the last week, we finally have some normalcy when it comes to the Indiana basketball program. Some players have transferred out. Some players have chosen to stay, more the latter than the former. And we're going to dive into what the roster looks like and so much more on our 192nd Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage for IU sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Tuesday, April 13th, 2021, where I am your host, Nithin Christian. Here with me tonight is my usual podcast co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, we have a loaded episode tonight. I said the dust had settled, but we've got a whole ton of stuff to talk about. When you saw Armaan Franklin and Joey Brunk transfer out of the program and Xavier Johnson come in from Pitt, what were your initial thoughts on those moves overall? How does that shape the roster for this upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, losing Armaan, I think first and foremost, my first thought on losing Armaan is good for him. Like, he ended up at one of the best programs in college basketball. He's going to be one of the guys at Virginia. That's a good, like, honestly, like, I think given the choice that he had to go to stay at IU, and I love IU, or go to Virginia and be that, like, if he's got goals to go to the NBA and do things like that, you know, I probably would have made the same decision as him. Like, that's a really good opportunity for him. Honestly, I was telling people who were asking me on Twitter, like, where I thought Armaan was going, and I was like, you take your pick between Illinois, Virginia, and I was saying somebody like even like the national runner-ups this year, like Gonzaga, could probably end up looking at him. Like, he's like one of the top guards in college basketball for next year. He's going to be one of the best players. Like, he should go on a team that's going to be competing. And next year's team for IU could compete, could not. There's a lot more certainty at Virginia. So good for Armaan and good for him. Joey probably wasn't going to get a ton of playing time. You saw Trace took a lot of the minutes at the 5 last year. He'll be taking a lot more of the minutes at the 5 this year. So that makes a lot of sense for him as well. And honestly, like, Joey's not super connected to the program. He was here, he played 1 year here, and then he was injured last year. So Butler was his first choice, and his coach leaves, and it's time for him to go and play his last year where he wants to play. And if he ends up and Chris Holtmann wants him at Ohio State, and he goes back to play for his coach, that's cool. And that's fine. We wish him luck, even though hopefully he, goes 0 of 10 from the field and with 6 turnovers if he plays this. If that is the case. I don't know. I'm just guessing there. But we wish those guys well. And then for Xavier coming in, right? That's huge. He's one of the best transfers on the market. Like, Armaan was like one of the best ones, and then a couple guys down the list, and then there's Xavier. And so we replaced Armaan with a very good player and somebody who fills a need that we have, which is that we really need solid point guard play. Somebody who can get downhill, somebody who can really dribble the ball and be a playmaker in the pick and roll. And we went and got him. So we lost Armaan, who plays a position where we have some guys that can fill Armaan's role. Like, let's be honest. We can have some guys that can step up. We'll talk about that in a minute. We're going to miss him, obviously, because none of them are as good as him. But we can have people come and fill that role. But we didn't have anybody that filled the role that Xavier had last year. So he's going to be a huge key to this team. And then same thing with Joey. Like, at first, when I heard the news today, I was like, oh, darn, I was really looking forward to having him on the team next year. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, you have Race, Trace, and then Logan Duncan. We forget that we actually have a recruit coming next year, 4-star from Cincinnati, who's going to probably want some playing time at the very least to develop as a player. So I don't see where Joey's going to get the playing time there, and it makes a lot of sense for me.
Yeah, and no one knows what kind of conversations are happening behind the scenes. For all we know, Mike Woodson might be looking out for Joey Brunk and saying, hey, we don't really envision a role for you on this team. We don't envision a lot of playing time for you. And Brunk, yeah, hey, Joey, you didn't play last year, and this is going to be your final season of college basketball, and you deserve the minutes somewhere across the spectrum of college basketball. And Brunk was the sort of the last person on the list. Clearly it was a decision that he was thinking about, Mike Woodson was thinking about. And when it was all said and done, the Hoosiers and Joey Brunk chose to part ways. Brunk now into the transfer portal, like seemingly everyone in college basketball. Before we really continue, I do want to specifically mention, yes, we are aware that earlier today, Slick Leonard passed away at the age of 88, a Hoosier legend, an Indiana icon, an NBA icon too, with his time as a radio announcer with the Indiana Pacers. Yeah, I mean, over on Indiana HQ, we've got a complete biography on Slick Leonard that you can go listen to, but obviously that news is weighing heavy on all of IU basketball and Hoosier Nation on this Tuesday. As far as Franklin is concerned, I look at Armaan Franklin and I think it still stings a little, Matt. It still stings a little because those are some big shoes to fill. He was a 30-minute per game guy. He shot 42% from three last season, and you saw him develop and mature his game so much. He just went, now he's gonna be dropping buckets for Virginia next year. It's a tough pill to swallow, but having Xavier Johnson on board will definitely help to ease the pain. Johnson's a 6'3" guard from Pitt who averaged double figures. For his career, he averaged 13.7 points per game, about 5 assists per game, as well as a steal and a half per game, which is nothing to scoff at either. He's an impact player on both sides of the floor. He's a 34% career three-point shooter. So we'll see if Mike Woodson can raise that percentage up a tick or two, because if he can become a 37% three-point guy next year, all of a sudden that really does elevate his ceiling. Xavier Johnson is someone who was mentioned in mock drafts thrown around the internet to be a second-round NBA draft prospect. So whenever Johnson decides to make that leap, he's got 2 years of eligibility remaining. Having a nice-looking three-point percentage will definitely help his cause with the pro scouts.
Sure.
The one thing I wanted to do, Matt, to start off our episode tonight is zoom out. We've got a pretty clear roster right now to look at. IU still has 2 scholarship spots open, so Mike Woodson will obviously be making phone calls and working the transfer portal to try to add in another player or two. But we can finally take a look at what we think is a mostly complete IU basketball roster for the 2021-22 season. Your guards are as follows: Rob Finney, Xavier Johnson, Parker Stewart, Christianlander, Anthony Leal, and Trey Galloway. Your forwards are Trace Jackson Davis, Race Thompson, Jerome Hunter, Jordan Geronimo, and Logan Duncan. Matt, look, there are 2 scholarship spots still available, but when you split the roster up in half and you look at the guards, then you look at the forwards, which group of players are you more excited about going into this upcoming season?
That's a loaded question. I mean, it obviously has to be the forwards, right? Because, I mean, Trace
PJD,
coming back. I mean,
Trace
that's
and
a pretty obvious question, but like, I'm excited for the guards as well. I mean, I'm excited to see what Xavier Johnson and Parker Stewart can bring to the table. So I'm actually going to go with the easy answer is the forwards, but I think in actuality, like, it's a guards game. I'm excited to see what the guards have to do. I'm excited to see what the staff does with and how the guards improve over the year. Remember, we have Lander coming back. He's a 5-star recruit who, had a rough last year. Let's see what the staff can do over the summer. There's a lot of things that they could do for a guard that is that young and that talented to change a course of his history at IU and his career at IU. So there's just a lot more what ifs on the guards. We know what we're getting out of our forwards. Like, at this point, we know what we're getting out of Trace. We know what we're getting out of Race. We know what we're getting out of Jerome. So that stuff is, I'm like, great. Like, amazing that we have Trace. Amazing that we have the rest of the guys. But for the guards, it's a lot of what ifs, and that's the fun part, right? And if those are answered positively, like, this team is going places.
That's a fair point. I will say, I don't know what we can expect out of anyone with his new coaching staff. I mean, you mentioned Jerome Hunter, for example. I don't know what kind of player he could be under Mike Woodson, either for better or for worse. I don't know if we're going to end up being 5 games into the season and Jerome Hunter's riding the bench for 35 minutes a game because he's not doing what Mike Woodson wants it to do. On the other hand, I could also see Hunter being a 40% three-point shooter and being, in fact, both sides of the court. And I just have no idea. Even the superstar, even Jackson Davis, I'm not really sure what exactly he's going to be next season, which is both, it's like half frightening and half exciting, intriguing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. And that's what I'm saying about the guards. It's like, not only is like we don't know what the staff is going to do with them, but then we also don't know like Xavier Johnson and Parker Stewart. IU fans have never actually seen them play in person. So, and they're going to be getting big chunks of minutes too, because they're supposed to be important players. And for whatever everybody says, like they're good. So there's like the double uncertainty. Like we don't know what we're getting. And then we also don't know what we're getting from the people that are helping them out. So that's why I went with the guards.
Yeah, I know. I like that. Now, one thing I wanted to do tonight, Matt, we've talked about the players all across Indiana's roster. As you sit here tonight on April 13th, where it's a seasonably nice day in Bloomington, Indiana, and probably 105 degrees down in Florida or whatever it is there, who are the 3 most important guards for IU next season? Just looking at the group of 6 guards that we talked about earlier, who are the 3 most important guards that will help the Hoosiers make the NCAA tournament next year, win Big Ten contests? 1, 2, 3. How do you rank them at the top?
Number 1, I believe, is Parker Stewart.
Ooh, hold on. That's a big deal, Matt.
Yeah.
You're telling me that the UT Martin transfer is going to be the most important guard for this team in this coming season? All right,
to make or break the season. Right. Yeah, okay. I think so.
All right.
Like, remember when Mike Woodson talks about the team, he talks about what he needs. What he says something universally, which we have said, and everybody else in the IU basketball media has said for about the last 4 years, and it's what Indiana has been missing. When people just don't understand how the heck we don't have, and that is shooting. And everybody, the first word that comes out of their mouth when talking about Parker Stewart is how great of a shooter he is. So we need shooting. We need it badly. We need playmaking, especially like late in shot clock, crunch time. Can't get the ball into Trace. Who's going to have the last shot kind of, shot-making mentality. Sure.
I like it. That. All right. Second and third, who you got after Parker Stewart?
My second one is Christianlander. As we know the talent that he has, if he can buy into what the coaches have, if he can hit the weight rooms this summer really hard and get adapted and get that confidence back that he had in high school. Remember, this guy, I went on Ant Wright's locker room and talked about this, but he was giving buckets to the Louisville players when he was in high school. Like, this is a guy who's a game changer, and we have him in the candy stripes. He just wasn't able to show it last year because he was undersized. It was a little bit in and over his head, and a lot of different reasons. And we don't even know what the heck was going on behind the scenes for him and the team. So there's a lot of factors that could factor into why he wasn't playing up to snuff last year. So to me, Lander is the second most important. Then I'll save you a transition. The third most important for me is Rob Finney. I think whatever Xavier Johnson gives us, and he's new, and that's great. Whatever he gives us, that's great, right? If he ends up being what he was like at Pitt this year, and it's like 10 points per game, 6 assists, 5 turnovers a game, that's fine. He's going to be great. He's going to help us a lot, but we need a defensive stopper. And I was listening to Dane Fife's press conference today. By the way, it's 45 minutes on YouTube. You can look it up and find it. if you would like to, he points out, I don't remember what the question was or how he got to it, but he brought up Rob Finney. He was like, he's the best defender in the Big Ten. And we didn't see that last year. And that was a lot of because of his confidence. If Rob Finney can find his confidence, because he's a good spot-up shooter, by the way. So having 2 point guards playing out there, one of them being two of them, Xavier Johnson's actually very good at defense, by the way, as well. So having Johnson and Finney out there, both defensive stoppers, hounding the ball wherever it goes, that's a championship winning backcourt. If they can play together and play the defense that we know that they can both play, or we expect Xavier Johnson to play, and we know Finney can play. Right. So those are the 3 most important guards for me.
Ooh, I like that. So here are my 3. Ready?
Yep.
Number 1, I've got Xavier Johnson. I think I'm ready to see him play a big role next season. This is somebody who tormented ACC opponents last year. And when I look at someone who at Pitt has started 81 out of 84 games, has consistently played over 30 minutes per game, and he consistently scores in double figures, that's music to my ears after watching the guard play we've seen on this team the last few seasons. And as I talked about a moment ago, if Johnson can knock down a few more threes at a higher clip than last year, we've got something cooking in Bloomington. Now, the second guy I'm going to mention is Anthony Leal. All right, let's not forget about how important this guy was when he got his playing time last year. Now, okay, he was a freshman, and he wasn't a 5-star freshman. And because of that, in a very competitive Big Ten conference, your head's going to be spinning at 100 miles an hour when
he was Indiana Mr. Basketball, though.
That's
got to mean for something.
Indiana Mr. Basketball. And I remember how well he played up in Madison against the Badgers. And I'm sitting here saying, hey, hello, this guy is someone who can go out and hit 4 or 5 threes and, maybe average 2 to 3 makes per game from deep. And in addition to that, move the basketball, grab a few rebounds. He's got good size for a guard, and make a difference on both sides of the floor. When I've seen Leal play well, it changes the dynamic for this IU basketball offense. And I'm really excited to see what kind of coaching and development Mike Woodson can offer Leal going into next season. And then my third guy is Lander. Lander is someone with so much talent and so much potential, the 5-star pedigree. I believe, according to 24/7 Sports, of all the players that entered the transfer portal, Lander had the highest recruiting ranking out of all of them. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a high-level prospect who, when he gets his feet wet and when he gets a little more comfortable with the Big Ten, and maybe when he gets a proper summer and early fall to work with Mike Woodson, and hopefully things get back up and running somewhat close to normal from the pandemic, that type of time in Cook Hall or an assembly hall or working with Mike Woodson is going to allow Lander to reach so much of that potential that we've talked about. So for me, the 3 guys that I'm really intrigued about going into the upcoming season are Johnson, Leal, and Lander. Same words, Matt. Out of the guys that we identified as on this basketball team, who are the 3 that are most important to IU success? Number 1 is obviously obvious. Obvious, man.
Obviously obvious, which is Trayce Jackson-Davis is number 1. We'd be kidding ourselves if we put anybody else there. He's a 13th All-American returning. Yeah. And he's a contender for National Player of the Year next year. And let's not kid ourselves. And let's enjoy Trayce while we have him, because we may only have him for one more March run next year. So let's enjoy him. The second most important player on the roster is, I said shooting, so Parker Stewart. Remember I said
no. Let's hold on. Let's talk about forwards, man. Let's talk about forwards.
Oh, forwards.
Forwards, yeah.
Sorry, my bad. You lagged out in a minute.
Oh,
Jerome Hunter. I can keep with the shooting, right? And keep with the shooting. It's Jerome, came into IU as a 3/4 who could stretch the floor and shoot the ball. Now, during his IU career, and so far, we've seen stretches where he shoots like 50% from three. And then there's other stretches where he shoots like 16%. So he's got to get consistent. If the staff can find a routine or whatever he needs to help him get consistent and just be that wing perimeter threat that we know he can be, that'd be great. Also, developing his perimeter game, because my God, he looks like he's a lost deer in headlights when he's got the ball and he's dribbling it. He looks very uncomfortable, doesn't know what to do with it. Was that last year's offensive system or Archie's offensive system that was doing it? I don't know. I don't have an answer. Otherwise, I would be on staff, and that'd be great. And my parents would be happy because I'd be making a lot of money. But Hunter, and they got to find that out. And if they can find that out, he unlocks another dimension for this team that is so good. And there's a lot of other IU podcasts that talk about Hunter, and we're all fanboys of him because he's got that NBA build, right? He's a wing who can play and guard, wings and guards, and he can shoot, ideally when we would need him to. So if he can unlock his true potential, and maybe even exceed what we think his potential is, that would be massive. And then the third one is Geronimo, to me. We know what we're going to get from Race Thompson. And honestly, for Race, this is my personal opinion, I don't know why he didn't transfer.
Ooh, really?
Yeah, because Trace is a great player, but he just doesn't fit the system that Mike Woodson's going to want to run. Mike Woodson's going to want to run 4 out. Right, and Trace has shown in high school that he can shoot the ball, but so far at IU hasn't. And sometimes, and this is his 4th year, by the way, of being at IU, sometimes a change of pace is good for you. And so for Race, I thought maybe that might have been something that he needed, but he decided to stay, and good for him. I'm going to root for him. But he's not going to make or break this team. He's going to be a great player, but he's not going to make or break his team. The ability for Jordan Geronimo to become that NBA prospect that we think he can be, if he can accelerate that and tap into that potential sooner, that would be a huge deal for this IU team. Of course, IU's 3rd on my list because if that doesn't happen, that's fine, right? You can play Race and Trace together. They've shown that they can do that. You can plug and play a lot of different people into this position. But if Geronimo can be that stretch 4, that glue guy, that defensive NBA saliva-making scout prospect that we think he can be, he's going to change the dimension of this team. And the team is going to go from, I think the ceiling is like a Sweet 16 appearance next year to maybe even a Final Four appearance if he can tap into that physical potential that he has.
Whoa. You threw some big ceilings out there in the last 10 seconds. No one's gonna pay attention to that at all. As far as I'm concerned, Jackson Davis is number 1. I don't even need to explain anything there. For me, Race Thompson is number 2, and the reason I put Race up there is because I think there still is another 3 levels he can get to for someone who has a great work ethic, for someone who's got a great level of physicality and just flat out physical skills and gifts. Some might say, I know there's at least one podcast host that is speaking right now who is jealous of Race Thompson's physical gifts.
There's 2.
And all I'm saying is I watched Race Thompson play like I did, probably 15 times last season. And I look at him and go, wow. I mean, I'm not sure if Race Thompson right now is a go-to post move. I'm not sure Race Thompson right now has a jump shot that he's comfortable with.
Yeah.
And just looking at those 2 things, if he can figure out 1 or 2 go-to moves down on the box to beat his matchup on a nightly basis, if he can get a jump shot that he's comfortable with, here's a guy who averaged 9 points and 6 rebounds last year who could do 14 and 8. And all of a sudden, you're talking about a much different type of contributor to this basketball team. And my third, yeah.
Nithin, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting here.
Yeah,
that's what I do best in the Hoosier Sound, is interrupting. But he's got to spread the floor, and that's the problem with Trace, is that he hasn't shown that he's been ability to. So even if he has a post move, that's fine. But one of him or Trace is going to have to develop a 15-footer that is that is somewhat reliable.
I think they both should. And I look at Race Thompson. He's not Yao Ming. Yeah, he's the guy.
Yeah, right.
Race is athletic. He is versatile. And I think that 15, 18-foot jump shot would be big for his development. And then B, how about unleashing him in transition on fast breaks?
Yeah,
I can't remember one fast break dunk that Race Thompson had last season. I bet you he's going to get 10 with Mike Woodson as the head coach.
If I'm going to be honest, I thought he looked pretty good with the ball in his hand on the transition too. That's another wrinkle you can throw in there. That's you want to talk about an NBA offense. That's an NBA offense is having your forwards bring up the ball and having the guards run off of screens like madmen. So, I mean that races would be huge, but their jump shot's got to be probably number one for Race if he's going to get the minutes that he probably deserves.
And then for my third forward, I really wanted to shout out Logan Duncan, but here's the deal. Even with Joey Brunk leaving the program, I can't ignore how important Jerome Hunter is to this team. I mean, for someone who, looked like at times one of the 2 or 3 best players on the team last season, I vividly remember his performance in Evanston to help bring the Hoosiers back from the deep, dark depths of despair against the Wildcats, somehow pulling that out of IU rear end. Hunter was huge in that game. He made a couple of other big impressions over the course of the season. There's so much talent there. I mean, you're talking about a top 60 recruit. Obviously, had the health, the medical problems in his first couple of years at IU. But if he's healthy and if he's ready to go, and if Mike Woodson can really connect with him, that's a player who can absolutely help the Hoosiers reach a whole nother rung on the ladder and possibly then, make the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. But that is a full 11 months away from figuring out. So now that we've kind of broken down the basketball situation, let's dive into who won the week this past week in IU sports. And there was a lot of news. The IU baseball team and the IU men's soccer teams are both having great seasons. The IU baseball team snapped a 5-game losing streak earlier, but overall, the record is solid. It's impressive. And the big news happened back on Saturday night, where Braden Tucker, as well as McCade Brown, combined on a no-hitter of the Illinois Fighting Illini. It was the first no-hitter that IU baseball threw since 1984. And the one on Saturday happened right here in Bloomington at Bart Kaufman Field as the Hoosiers knocked off Illinois. Braden Tucker, he ended up getting named as the Big Ten Pitcher of the Week for his performance in that game. He was the player who came out of the bullpen. And of course, that's a big deal right there. So Tucker and McCade Brown, huge as far as combining on the no-hitter, but the IU baseball team's off to a strong start. And then the men's soccer program, no surprise, they're on their roll once again here. They clinched their 3rd straight Big Ten regular season title. It's the longest streak in the conference. It's IU won 9 in a row from 1996 to 2004. They now face Maryland in the Big Ten tournament semifinals. That game will take place on Wednesday night on Big Ten Network at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. So if you're just hanging around the house, just want to tune into an IU sporting event, bam, Big Ten Network, 7:30 Eastern Wednesday night. The Hoosiers, who are number 3 in the country, take on the Terps here in Bloomington in the Big Ten tournament semifinals. So the Hoosiers are doing their thing again. Sophomore forward Victor Becerra, sophomore goalie Roman Celentano, and redshirt senior defender Spencer Glass earned all Big Ten first team mentions there too. So really the IU men's soccer team doing what they normally do. Baseball and men's soccer crushing it. On our mid-April podcast. If you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at IndianaHQ, as well as at the Hoosier Sound. So here's the deal, Matt. For just a moment, we're going to switch over to the gridiron, where there was huge news that came through earlier on this Tuesday afternoon, where 2023 top 100 national recruit safety Daeh McCullough committed to Tom Allen in Indiana. If that last name sounds familiar, McCullough is the son of IU's current running backs coach, Daeh McCullough, who's back for a second stint here at Indiana. Daeh McCullough had a bunch of high-level offers. Florida, Michigan, and Penn State all submitted a formal offer to McCullough, but he said, this is the school that I've always wanted to play for. So he committed to Indiana. Tom Allen has his biggest 2023 recruit to this point. He's not going to step on foot in Bloomington, on campus in Bloomington for a while. But, Matt, this is big news. I mean, Tom Allen is doing what all Hoosier football fans have wanted him to do, and that's get that success on the field and translate it to success in recruiting off of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the chicken or the egg argument when it comes to basically all college sports. It's like, does success come first, or does recruiting come first to then get successful, right? Like when you're a national program, do national programs, have they always been recruiting, or were they successful and then they turned that success into recruiting good players to then help continue the success, right? And so that's what IU's doing. IU molded the people that they were available to them into NFL guys, college stars, good, and a team from 2 wins a season to last year's team, right? And 8 wins a season, right? This is something that is new for IU. Look for more Daeh McCulloughs to come up, because this is just the start of things, right? And so some people on Twitter are going to say, and some of the national guys are going to be like, oh, good for Indiana, but, you know, he was a coach's son. Like, he's going to go to the school. And to that I say, he said it's the school he's always wanted to go to, right? And so his dad was working for the Chiefs, right? And he was in Kansas City, and he's now going to Bloomington South. You can go watch him, by the way, IU fans, if you're in or around the area, you can go watch him play football. But this is a guy who's on the verge of being a 5-star recruit. This is no chopped liver we're getting here, right? This is some creme de la creme of college football recruiting right here. This is a kid that has an NFL future, almost assuredly in his future. Yeah, this is a guy, the talent, as long as he doesn't mess it up and listens to his coaches and does all the right things, he's going to be in the NFL someday. And he's going to be in the NFL someday. He's going to be on Sunday Night Football starting, and he's going to say, I went to Indiana University. And that's going to speak a lot to some of the kids in the 2027 class and the 2028 class. These things compound on themselves. And it's the little tiny things, the Indiana University, where they make fun of the Ohio State. It's the little things that are going to be a huge deal. And also, by the way, the funniest thing in the world is that the lead recruiter for Daeh McCullough is Leal McCullough, who's obviously his dad. So I don't think he's allowed to go anywhere else when your dad's recruiting you. But this is huge news, and the fact that it's the coach's son shouldn't like take away from how big of a deal this is for IU. And I'm sure there's more to come.
Yeah, and don't underestimate still the impact of IU's new defensive coordinator, Charlton Warren, who came from Georgia in the offseason. May not be listed as the lead recruiter, but obviously has a big defensive background. And you better believe he and Daeh McCullough had a conversation or two during the recruiting process as well. And if they didn't, well, Warren is going to really have a super talented player to mold once McCullough steps into the Memorial Stadium practice and the practice facilities around it. This is kind of why everyone gets so excited when Indiana beat Penn State and Michigan in the first 3 weeks of last season. It's because, on that specific Saturday, it counts just as one win in the standings. But then you see what kind of impact it has down the road, because in other years, McCullough probably would have ended up at Penn State or at Michigan or at Florida or Georgia. And you better believe those schools are still going to be recruiting him and pursuing him hard until kickoff of the 2023 football season. And so they make no mistake about it. There's no letter of intent involved just yet. But that's why people get excited, and that's why college football is just a little bit different than the NFL. It's a lot different than the NFL. It's because, hey, one win on the field can lead to a bunch more off the field. And just think about this, once a couple more seasons come and go and McCullough is ready to play at IU, a lot of the players you're familiar with right now, Tywan Mullen and Reese Taylor, for example, will have moved on, especially Jalen Williams would have moved on. You're going to hear Jamar Johnson. You're going to hear his name announced in the NFL draft in a couple of weeks. Well, guess what? Daeh McCullough is going to look at Jamar Johnson and say, I want to be that kind of guy. And McCullough could end up being even better, given the physical profile. He could end up being Jamal Adams or Derwin James, or for, Colts fans out there, a guy like Bob Sanders. These types of huge impact safeties that Indiana's never had a big one in the NFL.
Yeah.
This could be a Tracy Porter was a corner, not a safety. We'll see what Jamar Johnson does in the league, but that's the kind of history McCullough can make at Indiana, and IU fans should undoubtedly be excited about that. Real quick, it's time for a social media shout out. And and back on Friday, Mike Woodson had a little session with the media, and he dove into a wide variety of topics. And one of the questions I asked him on Friday was about the role of analytics in his coaching. And here's the deal: Mike Woodson had all the reason in the world to say, I don't care about the statistics. I've been in the NBA for 40 years. I've got enough experience and enough intuition to lead Indiana to an undefeated season. But what Woodson instead did was sat back and gave a very clear, introspective, transparent answer to this question. He said, look, analytics has played a major role in my coaching over the last 5 or 6 years. It's something that we're all cognizant of. And over on IndianaHQ.com, we've got a full breakdown of what exactly Woodson said and how he may have been able to help IU in some areas last season and what he could possibly do in the years to come when he's the head coach. I thought it was a very, very clever answer that Woodson gave to that question. And it's a trend that we all have to become aware of, if not already, the role of statistics and data in basketball and how they drive certain coaching decisions. Overall, if you want to go follow us, you can do so at Indiana HQ, at the Hoosier Sound. We've got all sorts of articles coming out every day, all the news that you want. If you don't want to scour Twitter 24/7 like we do, you can just head over to IndianaHQ.com, and everything you need to know will be right there on that homepage. That website is your one-stop shop for everything related to IU sports. Also, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. That stuff is really important. And if you can do that, that type of support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans, such as yourself. Now, Matt, we just talked about analytics for a moment, but one of the other trends that's coming across college basketball and college football is the rapid increase and the rapid growth in the presence of the transfer portal, where I believe over 1,300 players have submitted their name this year. It's a record number, and it is still growing. So overall, Matt, are you sick of it, or do you sit back and say, hey, look, it's 2021, give the players a vehicle to let them explore their options as much as possible? How do you see it?
That's a loaded question. Again, you like asking these loaded questions, Nithin. And Coach Woodson's going to have a hard time with you in these press conferences. I mean, geez. Look, the transfer portal to me in college football is a lot better than it is in college basketball. In my opinion, I feel like in football, they've kind of figured it out where they don't have a billion transfers on every roster every year, and you can't just make a team overnight of transfers, because there's a lot more positions in football. There's a lot of stuff going on. You can't lose half your team and then get an entirely different defensive line and hope that that's going to work out next year. Of course, IU has had some luck in the past with getting transfers in. Some of them are playing in the NFL for the Eagles, like Stevie Scott, who was not Stevie Scott. Oh my goodness, my brain. My brain is not working right now.
I'm not.
Jordan Howard.
Oh,
Jordan Howard, who's a transfer to IU. My brain just shut off. There's so many names.
My first name I was thinking was Nate Sudfeld because I was like,
but he wasn't a transfer.
He wasn't a transfer, and B, he's now in San Francisco. I had no clue that you were. Yeah, I mean, I'm
Jordan
glad
Howard
you got Jordan Howard.
Jordan
I'm
Howard
glad you got Howard because I definitely was.
Jordan Howard. Sorry, guys. You have a billion names you have to remember. And new ones pop up every day. Sometimes you just forget it. I'm turning into my mom. Anyways, in college basketball, it's gotten crazy. There is 13 roster spots on a college basketball team, and there's 1,300 people transferring. You can't tell me that all these people that are transferring are going to find a place to play, which means some of them are going to probably end up going from Division I to Division II, or maybe even Division III, which for me makes no sense. If you have a roster spot in Division I, you keep it. You have a scholarship to go to a school to get a 4-year education. Some of you are making a dumb decision. Some of you are making a smart decision. Like Armaan, who's going from playing the Pac-Man at IU, then new coaching staff's going to have to learn a whole new system. He goes to Virginia where they play the Pac-Man, even more so than at IU, like a more accelerated version. He's not going to need to learn a lot to play at Virginia. He's already got the principles down, so he's going to be comfortable there. So there are some part of me that says this is great and like more power to them, but then I remember my decision-making processes when I was 19 and 20 and 21 and 22. And oh, wait, I'm 23 right now. Like, we make bad decisions. And so giving them the ability to make a bad decision or have people in their ear tell them something they probably should do in hindsight is not ideal. So for me, personally, I like the idea of having to stay at the school that you commit to for 2 years before transferring. And then you can transfer wherever you want. That makes more sense to me. Like I see juniors and seniors trying to transfer, trying to get those minutes at a school that has a roster spot and could need a little bit more juice. I like that idea, but to me, it doesn't make any sense why you commit to a school your freshman year, and because you don't get the minutes that you want, you leave. That's just, to me, that breeds a bit of, it's too much chaos. Like there needs to be at a certain point a cap on the chaos that is the portal, and I think freshmen leaving after 1 year, and obviously there have to be exceptions, Nithin, like. If their coach leaves, right? And they commit to a coach and a staff and a school, but then the coach leaves after their freshman year. I understand them wanting to leave. That would make sense. But if your coach doesn't leave and you don't get the minutes you want because you didn't play well, that's on you, not the coach. So you should be looking to transfer. You should be looking to get better and try to work with your coaching staff to get out on the court.
Yeah, I don't know, Matt. Like it's a debate worth having. I know a lot of people are especially who are really plugged into the world of college basketball, see the news updates every day and they see, oh my God, this guy's transferring and that guy's transferring. This guy's putting his name in, that guy's putting his name.
And that guy's got an Arkansas GIF under his name. Oh, that guy's got an Arkansas GIF under his name. Oh, that guy's got an Arkansas GIF under his name.
It's not, it's funny because it's not even that they're putting their name in the portal anymore. It's you've got these really fancy put together social media infographics where it's like really like movie theater, movie poster style. It's like not only are you putting your name in the portal, you're also like your trailer. It's the Xavier Johnson story.
It's their mixtape that they're handing out on the street. Here, take my mixtape. I'm a rapper.
Yeah.
Listen to my songs.
Yeah, it's just Well, it literally reminds me of movie posters, which like I don't even know if movie posters are a thing anymore. But it's like Xavier Johnson coming out this week on the transfer portal. But here's the thing, like it's chaotic, but chaos isn't always a bad thing. You know what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day, if there's a freshman, let's just use Indiana for example. A freshman comes through the doors here, and let's say it was Christianlander. Christianlander came in and said, "Hey, I played a year, and after playing a year, I feel like I want to move on and explore my options and see what's out there." I think it's fine. I think that's all right. And Jordan Geronimo did the same thing. Now, with Indiana, the coaching change was there. But even if there wasn't, you have the same guy, Walker Kessler. Oh, that's a bad example, too. Overall, even if there is no coaching change, I don't think anyone's really hurt by this. Now, the illusion or the delusion that some players might have is that the grass is greener somewhere else. And what you don't want to do with your collegiate experience is play 3 or 4 years with a year at a different school every season and really never get your rhythm going. And then when it's all said and done after 4 years, you neither have a college playing experience you're that happy about. And then you also don't have those connections that you're able to really grow and materialize and formulate with your teammates over the course of multiple years. But setting that aside, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I think it's perfectly fine. And college basketball changes. Life changes. Everything now is different than it was 2 years ago, let alone 20 years ago or 40 years ago. So I think it's fine. I know it's a lot. I agree. It's a lot of players in the portal. But I don't think as it's currently structured that it's that bad of a problem.
It's too much chaos, Nithin. There's 1,300 players. It's
all right. I mean,
like 200, right? There's like 200 and something Division I basketball teams or whatever. It's like
350.
350, right? That means half the rosters are transferring, Nithin. 1,300 is literally that's 100 rosters are transferring total. Like it's a bit much. It's a bit much because not only do you have Division I people transferring, you have community college transfers that put their name into the portal, right? And I saw one committed to Texas today, by the way. Mm-hmm. People are very happy about him doing that. But then you have people like you mentioned who take 4 college. Like there's a guard from DePaul who's transferring.
Charlie Moore.
Yeah. There's another one I believe. I don't think it's Charlie Moore. But this is his 4th school in 4 years.
It is Moore. It is Charlie Moore.
Yeah, and he decommitted from a school before he went to college. So this is like his 5th or 6th school that he's been committed to.
Yeah. Right.
At a certain point, in my opinion, you got to stick with the choice that you made, right?
Sure.
And,
I see what you're saying. Mm-hmm.
There, of course, there's going to be stipulations, but like for me, it's too much to keep track of, and it's going to turn the dirty casuals, off from the sport because they tune in one weekend of the NCAA tournament and they like this dude, and then the next year he's on another team, and they turn back in 2 years later and he's on a completely other team. So it's that kind of thing, and it's that kind of inconsistency that's going to turn off the casual viewer and the casual college basketball.
Yeah, I mean, there's always risk to it. I mean, here's the thing, in every other walk of life, right? Students in business school can transfer and go to another business school if they want, or same thing with pre-med or law or whatever. But for some reason, when it comes to the world of basketball, everyone's got to get involved and try to tweak the rules and change the rules and steer them one way and steer them another way. And here's the thing. There are absolutely risks involved with transferring and moving on to another school because you think you have a better shot to succeed there. But there are equal risks at staying at a place where you don't fit. And that's a big problem too. Last thing you want to do is spend 3 or 4 years at a place where your potential does not get maximized. And then if playing the pros, well, you're not as good as you could have been, because there's a lot of change that happens in college basketball. The highest touted high school basketball players, a lot of them tend to struggle in the college game because the level of competition is so different. And a lot of the lesser known players in high school basketball end up potentially doing great at the collegiate level. And so there's a big learning curve in the college game. There really is. And when it's all said and done, there are pros and cons to all of it. But at the end of the day, I think it's fine. Coaches can come and go, players can come and go. I think it's look, and now I will say this. If you want maybe the NCAA needs to have a site where they make everything publicly available. And I know they're never going to do that because of amateurism things, but here's the deal. Like everything else with the NCAA, this isn't a state secret. Everyone, once these players send out that message on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, you right away are aware that they're leaving, and there are a bunch of Twitter accounts that track these things. 24/7 Sports does, the Twitter account @VerbalCommits does. They all track this stuff. So if the NCAA maybe made a publicly available database, that's one thing, but they're never going to do that. Another thing you can do is maybe institute windows, dates during the year where you say, okay, from March 15th to May 15th, the transfer portal is open and all this activity can happen. And as of May 15th, unless there's a major exception or whatever, we're not going to allow. Maybe that's something to do there. But at the end of the day, I do feel like the power should be with the players to come and go as they want. But they do have to understand the risks, and their guardians have to understand the risks. And their parents and their friends and their family and their connection and their network has to understand that risk, because there are a lot of risks. Xavier Johnson might end up playing 10 minutes a game at Indiana. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
and that's for Johnson and Mike Woodson to figure out, because, hey, Xavier Johnson was shooting the ball a lot at Pitt and whatever. But at Xavier Johnson, it's an NBA player. So, that's the kind of risk and reward that you have to consider with the transfer portal. We did release a poll, as we do every week over at the Hoosier Sound. Is the NCAA transfer portal getting out of control? We asked our followers. 55% of you said, yeah, it's crazy right now. 30% of you said, no, let the players explore. 15% of you said, don't care. Over 200 of you have voted. This poll will be up for a week, so head over to our Twitter account at the Hoosier Sound and cast your deciding ballot. So, Matt, on this Tuesday night, April 13th, what are your closing thoughts? We've talked about so much. We talked about the transfer portal. We talked about Mike Woodson. We talked about the IU basketball roster. We talked about Daeh McCullough committing to play football for Tom Allen in 2023. So much we covered. What stood out to you tonight? You can also just go completely off the board and talk about something else random.
I won't do that to you, Nithin. I just want to congratulate Armaan on the opportunity that he has in front of him and wish him luck. And I with that, also wish his mom luck. We had his mom on the podcast back in the day when he committed, and little did we know he's going to end up being one of IU's best players in the second year that he was here. And I'm just very happy for him and his family that they get to go on and do a new adventure and something new. And so I'm sure his mom will be rooting for him from Indianapolis, unless she's moving out to Virginia. I don't know,
to Charlottesville.
I don't know what their plans are.
I'd stay in Indy.
but my point is I'd stay in Indy. Yeah, I would, for multiple reasons. But my point is to IU fans is that we should root for Armaan and be vocal on Twitter when he does well. That's a good thing that athletes will see that, we got our back and we're a loyal fan base. And I'll be doing that. And I'll be following Virginia very closely next year, and probably adding his mom a couple of times on Twitter about when her son does something well. We should be proud of him because he's a member of, and be a Hoosier always. And then we should be excited for the guys that we got, right? Xavier Johnson, and we might be getting another transfer here soon. Some people are saying and whispering some things in people's ears. So that would be nice, and look out for the new assistant coach. So there's still a lot of stuff about IU basketball going on, and IU football, getting new recruits as well. And we will be here next Tuesday to talk all about it. I promise you.
Yeah, unless something crazy happens and we have to jump on emergency style once again, which I felt like we've done pretty frequently.
I like those. Those are fun.
Real quick, before we get into closing thoughts, I do want to mention there are some comments about people that Indiana might be considering for that third assistant job. Yasir Rosemont from Alabama is a name that's been thrown out there. Nothing official has been announced by IU. I know they're still exploring their options from that third choice, but just personally looking at Rosemont's background, he was at Alabama most recently. He's someone who I think would make a very, very valuable contribution to this IU staff. Again, nothing's been finalized. Who knows? It might completely take a left turn here and things change, but Just wanted to throw that update in there. And then as far as, overall, I mean, this program is at a very interesting point, right? So we've been able to zoom out tonight and talk about how basically Armaan Franklin, Al Durham, and Joey Brunk will probably be playing basketball somewhere else in the fall. I mean, Durham and Franklin for sure, and we're assuming Brunk will do the same. Meanwhile, Xavier Johnson, Parker Stewart come in, and by the way, Big Ten ACC challenge matchups kind of looking like Indiana might either face Pitt or Virginia. I mean, if it's anything else, I'm going to be disappointed. But like this, we're going to get a lot of answers coming up here. If Armaan Franklin goes to Virginia and turns into a superstar, we're going to be like, wow, it's really disappointing that the Indiana Hoosiers couldn't unleash more out of Armaan Franklin. Don't overlook Al Durham. If Al Durham all of a sudden becomes a 15-point per game scorer shooting 40% from three, we're going to be asking the same type of questions.
He'll be a good player for Providence, by the way. He's going to fit really well into Ed Cooley's system.
I think he will too. And meanwhile, things could work out for IU as well. Xavier Johnson could come in here and be an NBA draft prospect a year from now. Or we could be talking about how in the world was this guy a double-digit scorer at Pitt, and then all of a sudden really struggling in Bloomington? I mean, over the next 365 days, we're going to get a lot of interesting answers about Mike Woodson, about Archie Miller, and the type of coach and developer of talent he was. And it's all going to play itself out. And I know basketball season doesn't start for another 7 months, but man, I'm excited to see how it all plays out. But that about wraps it up for our 192nd show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you to our live audience. You're all beautiful people. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always,